All right, welcome back in to Hawks Huddle, episode 21 here on April 21st, 2021. A lot of 21s going on there, but we are super excited to be joined by Adam Rank. He is a longtime NFL media talent. You can see him on NFL Network on a variety of their shows, most notably NFL Fantasy Live, where he helps everybody set their lineup up. He's also can be found on Twitter at Adam Rank, an overall funny guy. We are super excited to have a chat with him. How you doing, Adam?
Oh, wonderful. Wow. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. I love that because I fake people out sometimes with my bio where I'll list like GMFB weekend first just to see if somebody truly knows who I am. But then I was like, oh, I go, he obviously knows who I am until you said that I help people out with their lineups. But that's clearly not the case. I probably ruin more fantasy leagues than win them. So I apologize retroactively and in advance.
Adam, this setup you got here, it's amazing. Are those Funko Pops? Is that how you pronounce them in the background
that's
there?
it.
Where do you get them?
There's a variety of Funko Pops. Believe it or not, Hot Topic sells more than t-shirts. So I have a variety of them. I have I go to Hot Topic. I go onto some of the online stores. I don't know. It goes in fits and spurts. I have like a real, I don't know, and it's kind of like when you start a new workout regimen, like when you're into it, like you're going every day, you're working out 3 hours a day, and then you kind of fall off. And that's the way it goes with Funkos. We're all by like 30 and then not buy another one for 6 months. But it's been over the last calendar year, it has been a growth of all sorts of things that we were, because when I first started, it was just a blank wall. And then like last March, it was a blank wall. And now over the course of a year, we've added slowly but surely. I have a 5-year-old who also likes to add some stuff. So it just,
I love that.
Is that the drawing in the back there?
Yeah, that's her and her brother.
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of hats too. It's great. I love that.
As a bald person, I have a lot of hats.
You have a lot of hats. I love hats. I love collecting them. So hats for sure are number one. I do want to get into you a little bit. First of all, do you ever get bored of talking about football all day, or are you just it's your thing?
You'll find out soon when I take this off topic and start talking about a wide variety of subjects.
Comedy.
Like anything, whatever. Yeah. I've been watching Ozark. I want to talk to everybody about that. I take my kids to school seemingly just about every day. I flaked on them today. I'm like, their mother had to go get them today. I think it's going to be, I can't wait to hear my daughter's reaction. Cause I've only missed picking her up this entire school year once. And she was not having it. She just, she's a creature of habit. You get you get your things going. So she did not appreciate it, but now I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm interested to see how that turned out, but I do like to talk about a wide variety of things. And obviously I don't mind talking football. Like it's fun. Like it's my job. I don't care I don't care to talk to it. There's I have certain neighbors who that's all they want to talk about.
Right. Cause you're like that football guy who lives next door. So they just see you as that, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because one of the fellow dads at our elementary school here, he's a high school baseball coach at one of the Marina High. Like people care, like Marina and yeah. I don't always want to talk baseball with him because I know he probably I don't know. I try to talk about other dad things with him and whatever. He's a huge Angels fan too, so I didn't change my hat. I was filming something earlier for NFL 101. So I had to make sure I took down a number of my Angel things, put up Bear stuff.
Right.
So I try not to talk. So I don't always want to talk baseball with, it's hard not to sometimes. And I think that was my entryway to start because he's a quiet guy who kind of hangs out by himself. And I wanted to be, believe it or not a super outgoing person.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah. I'll sit there. I don't know. I don't want to be bothered. And there was another mother who would show up every day. And it took us 3 months to start talking to each other. Although we were wearing masks, So it's hard to like have
Yeah.
the nonverbal communication. So we're starting to, so I'm starting to try to include as many parents as possible in anything. And thankfully, there's only one dad who likes football, and he's an Oklahoma fan, and he has no
Oh.
idea who I am. So it's great.
All right.
But I can talk football with him because I kind of, I'll be like, hey, I go, I just asked him the other day, I go, do you think Jamar Chase is the best receiver? And he was just talking about it. Like he just had a great little take on it. I'm like, okay, cool. And like, that was it. But again, I'm in a mask, so he doesn't know, although my voice is annoying. So if you know my voice, you'll know me. So I guess that was a long answer for like, no, I don't mind always talking football. Sorry. I'll get back to your point.
Touch on a variety of topics. Like you said, you were going to go off gear there, rode off there.
I could see the pain in Jacqueline's face. So she's like, why did I ask it? Like,
No.
I thought this was the most innocuous question I could ever ask somebody. And this guy's just going on about whatever, talking to some dad who likes Oklahoma.
No,
and
I
we're
love
talking
it.
about local high school baseball in Huntington Beach. It's like, I don't know. This is what you get with me. It's not like, listen, I feel bad for you because you've had Steve White on, and you've had Jim Trotter, who are the brightest minds at NFL Network. And you're like, everybody who works there must be sharp. And then I show up and you're like, okay, not everybody.
No, but like,
But if
but don't they kind of see you as like this comedy guy? Because you are, like wouldn't you call yourself a comedian? Because you went on tours with the improv and you've done stand up. So don't you kind of see yourself as a comedian as well? And don't they kind of see you that as well?
100%. Yeah, they see me as a clown, is I think what you're asking. Yeah, that's
No,
exactly.
of course not. No.
That's exactly what they see.
You're just that like funny guy who lightens up the mood everywhere, because everyone's kind of like serious. Like people who work there, I'm sure, are very very serious with their job, but you're kind of just like a breath of fresh air who's just kind of relaxed and just enjoying their time, which I love.
I love your description of that. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I remember one of my greatest moments in comedy happened at the NFL Network. I made Mike Mayock grin. And I thought that was like, you're like, that's getting a laugh from anybody else. I'm like, Mike Mayock was bemused by something that I said. I said, I'm going to retire. I'm never going to make another joke. Like this is my walk off. This is my Elway winning back-to-back Super Bowl. John Elway was a quarterback at one time.
Yes, of course.
I'm just joking. Anytime I get these kids on, I feel so bad. I was, because you're very young is what I'm trying to get. Like you guys know, like John Elway in your lifetime has only been an executive. It's not like you wouldn't know. I know that you knew that he was a football player, but I really have to check myself sometimes. Cause even like, I have to ask sometimes. I'm like, I'll be talking about a band or something and be like, you guys, like you've heard of the Beastie Boys, right?
Of course.
Or something like that,
Yeah.
which is obvious to me. Although I will, like some lady in the neighborhood here, her daughter is named Brooklyn. And she goes, she's like, Brooklyn, like that song. She's like, have you heard of the Beastie Boys? And I'm like, I saw the Beastie Boys in concert, lady. So don't come to me like I don't know who the Beastie Boys are. But what was my point? People are, I made Mike Mayock laugh. No, grin. It wasn't a laugh. It was a
yes.
grin.
Right.
It was a grin.
Yeah, I want to, Adam, I want to focus a little bit on sort of that comedy career and more of sort of how you kind of got into the whole job at NFL Network. So you started kind of there as an intern, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and then just sort of working through, kind of rising the ranks, and I know you had some work with the Los Angeles Times, some published stuff with the New York Times, things like that when you were out of high school. Just how was that kind of journey up to NFL Network?
Yeah, I really, nobody in my family up and to the point that I graduated, nobody had graduated college. Now I've had nieces who've graduated now. We've started to get some like we have teachers in the family now. So it's cool. So I was the first one. And I remember my parents were adamant about me going to college. And they were, because even my dad, who was in the Navy, at first was kind of like, maybe you should go into the service. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. But they both softened. He softened. My mom was about like, you got to go to college. So they wanted me to go to college, and I went to Cal State Fullerton. And, it's funny because I always wanted to be in comedy. My mom and I would stay up. She would let me stay up late when I was a little kid watching Saturday Night Live. I got to see the Tonight Show on Friday night. So she always let me like get into comedy. I love comedy. I love sports. And so I actually thought, because one of my sisters is in entertainment, and I'm like, I'm going to go do comedy. And my parents, like, again, my Navy dad was like, absolutely not. And my mom was like, no, go to college, like be the first one to go to college, to graduate and do all that stuff. So I did. And funny enough, I went to Cal State Fullerton, and I was a high school baseball player. And I'm like, well, let me see what I could do like baseball wise. And that took about 3 hours to realize, nope, not good enough to play here. It was a nationally ranked program at the time. So I'm like, yeah, this is not going to work for me.
No.
And then I was a business major because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know like what to pick, like for a major. Like, I don't know, like, how do I graduate in 4 years? Like, what is business just seems what smart people would do. And it was talking to one of my friends, his mother, actually, who was an educator. And she was talking to me and she goes, she's like, you're a good writer. Like, why didn't you ever investigate going into journalism? And I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. Like, you can, what's going on? She's like, yeah, you would eventually having a career writing for a newspaper or a magazine or something. Like back in the magazines were like these publications that we used to have. It's kind of like, it was like kind of like a giant Twitter feed, but in a paper form for you guys. It's like Instagram, but on printed paper that was bound together. You guys would kind of, it's like a bunch of Snapchats, but static. So she's like, you can have a career like that. And so I said, oh, I'm like, I had no idea. And she's like, yeah. And if you wanted to go into broadcast journal, I'm like, what? Like, this is what, like, are you serious? And she's like, yes, like, this is the whole point of college. So I switched majors and I loved it and got an intern or covered prep sports for the LA Times, got an opportunity to apply for an internship with NFL Publishing, which was based in Los Angeles, which was convenient for me. And the guy doing the hiring was a former LA Times guy. So it was really easy for me because my interview was like, hey, do you know Bob Rohr? Do you know, all these like names, like, hey, I know that person. It was 20 minutes of this. And then he's like, oh, by the way, do you have any clips, newspaper clips? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, hey, cool. I'll call you back. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know if that was good or bad. But I got the gig and then I ended up doing it for 3 summers. Yeah, I did it 3 years, 3 or 4 years. Anyways, on my last year, I was done. I was done with college. I had nothing to do. And Chuck Garrity, who is the hiring manager, was going on vacation for a couple of weeks. So on that Friday, which was my last Friday, instead of the usual pomp and circumstance of like, I'd get a watch and get some swag, get a denim shirt with an NFL logo or something cool, big send off. We get Tito's tacos or something or whatever. I got none of that. And I'm like, oh, and so I left on Friday. Sunday afternoon, I'm at a bar in Newport Beach called Cassidy's drinking. And this is where all good ideas are born. And I just told my buddy, I said, I'm going to show up tomorrow. Like, the guy's gone for 2 weeks. I go, at the very least, I will get paid for 2 more weeks. And so like, oh, cool. I was making like $8 an hour, which back in the day was good. Well, I was also still working at the Improv as a food runner. So at that point, I was making bank. So I thought. I showed up, my key card worked and like nobody really batted an eye. And when you're an intern, a lot of the job was just walking around. Like, they would give you stuff to copy edit, but it's just like walking around to see if you could help anybody out with anything.
Yeah.
And as luck would have it, this guy was doing a trading card set and he needed somebody to do a bunch of research. So I'm like, oh, I'm your man. So when Chuck Garrity came back to work 2 weeks later, he just walked by my office and I had believe it or not, I had an office. And he's just like, hey, he's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh yeah, like Peterson's got me working on this trading card set for Ron Mix. And I'm looking up some quotes and stuff. And he's just like, all right, he shrugs and doesn't bring it up again for another 6 months or so. Like, it's a while. Although he did call me the Cal Ripken of interns. And Cal Ripken was a baseball player who had it now. So enough of those jokes. Okay. So then he shows up in my office one day, and then he has a little Post-it note, and he's like, by the way, he's like, you can't intern forever, which I thought was going to be like, well, it was a good run, but they had hired, like, they just hired, like, here you go. You're going to be an employee now. Here's what you're going to make. It was a yellow Post-it note. I'm so bummed that I lost it. Through many moves through the years, I lost it, but it was cool. And you're just like, oh my God, like I'm now a member of this NFL media. And long story short, now I'm doing this. No, I will say, I know this was, again, I am so sorry that I'm giving you the longest possible
We
answers.
know this is
Oh,
what
no,
we
yeah.
want.
The most innocuous thing. So I worked for the publishing group for a number of years. They shut it. Actually, they closed the publishing group to start NFL Network, by the way. Because when you're doing it, there's always these like head count, like, hey, like NFL Network needed 50, they needed to hire 50 people, but they needed to get rid of 50 people. So they're like, oh, this publishing group's got 50 people. So like, okay, you're all gone. I know it was heartbreaking. You're like, oh, because I cockily, arrogantly was just like, hey, I'm going to work here forever. And then they showed me, but I did kind of still freelance for them. I continued to ghostwrite Chris Collinsworth's column, contributed him some stuff to NFL publishing, and NFL.com had been farmed out for the longest time through Starwave, ESPN, and then it was through CBS Sportsline. And I knew when the contract was up. So I always kind of kept my eye out. So I did a bunch of odd jobs. I took, gigs writing about restaurant development. Like I have a weird knowledge of QSRs, quick service restaurants, fast food places that people just don't understand. Like Marcus Grant will be like, how do you know so much about the history of Burger King? And I'm like, I used to actually write about this stuff just to like put food on the table. And so I knew that they were going to eventually it just made too much sense that NFL.com was going to come in house. And so I applied for a gig and went in there and lied my ass off. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, like I just want to be an editor now. Like I have no desire to be on TV. I don't want to write, like telling them everything that they want to hear. And then I get the job and I'm like, I really want to write. How do I get on air? Like that kind of stuff. I gave it a couple months before I did. No, I'm trying to think. I gave it like a couple of years of just like doing, like putting up AP stories on NFL.com and doing some other things and doing Adam Schefter's blog with him. It was good. It really was a cool gig. Like it wasn't the worst work in the world. And I did tell them like, hey, I wouldn't mind, writing a little bit more, whatever you got. And the manager at the time, a guy named Jim Loftus, was like, okay. He's like, our fantasy department was one person at the time. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. If you will copy edit all the fantasy content, I'll let you write some stuff, like whatever you want to do. And I'm like, okay, that's perfect. I'll do it. And so I did that. And then they wanted to start, and this is back in 2009. They wanted to do a la carte videos about like, hey, here are the top 5 sleepers for this or that, or anything like that. And the manager had known that because I was still doing stand-up at this point. I should point that out. I was doing open mics and stand-up shows and everything, bugging people at work like, hey, come to the Comedy Store. I'm going to be there. I'm going to do 5 minutes on a night of 1,000 comics, like that kind of stuff. There was another guy that I worked with on the desk who was also a comedian. And so we would go do all these, we would make all our coworkers go to it and whatever. But it worked out because when they started doing these videos, they said, do you mind, jumping in there? Like, it's always good to have another voice. You're writing about fantasy. You like, what kind of stage presence do you have? And I'm like, well, let's go try it out. And so they gave me a little bit of a tryout, and they liked what they saw. I don't know why, because I think back to those early videos, like they were so brutal. But I look back, and so like the stand-up part of it got me into this thing, which led to the following year we did NFL Fantasy Live, which started off on Sunday mornings only, a live show for an hour and a half. It was Michelle Beisner was the host. That's Joe Buck's wife. Dave Damashek, Michael Fabiano. And I was like on a side set answering Twitter questions, and they would throw to me. and all this stuff. And I would just do I had like 30 seconds to do something stupid, like super wacky that was memorable. Like I always,
Yeah.
studying sidekicks and late night television with like something that I really enjoyed, or just thinking about like Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
When you think of like John Mulvaney or somebody like that, who started off as like a role player, like in featuring John Mulvaney, and they would do like you go in, you do like 30, you get 3 minutes on update or something, like this is your time to shine. And that's the way that I always approached it.
Okay.
And over the years, that show evolved, it eventually became a daily show, I should say. And then at some point, I just kept getting more and more responsibility with it, more and more roles. And now we're to the point now where I'm synonymous with the show, as the intro alluded to. So it's been kind of fun. Like I look back and now I want to be like the guy who never leaves Saturday Night Live. Like you're like, oh yeah, we can't get rid of him.
Keenan,
Keenan Thompson.
Like Keenan Thompson's been there since I was born, before I was born. So.
Oh my God, that's true.
I think so, right? Yeah, I was born in 2001, so I think he was.
Oh my God, that's right.
In the 90s, right?
Yeah,
I've been watching it forever. Yeah, so your story, that's unbelievable. This entire journey you've been on. But I want to go back to when you found out that you can do writing as a job. Did you ever think of being an SNL writer?
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was like the first thing you wanted to do.
I was taking any opportunity, and I will tell you that I don't know if I've ever told this story recently. And, because I do a lot of podcasts and we always talk about this. I'm glad that you asked this because this is a fun little story. So I wrote for a magazine called NFL Insider. And I used to write, there was a section, the front of the book section was called The Shield. And I pretty much wrote that whole section. And I got to do, the editor just let me do whatever I wanted. And we always did a last in 10 list. And it was like late night with David Letterman. It was dumb things like, hey, top 10. And it was you could tell like I was such a Letterman fan because it would be like top 10 Tom Brady complaints. And I'll never forget, I don't know, there was an NFL PR guy named Greg Aiello who would always have to approve of these jokes. And for Tom Brady, and you guys probably legitimately might not get this joke, but it was like Tom Brady's complaints was he was tired of hearing he's the youngest one in curls, which is a reference to the Brady Bunch theme song, which that person should have known because he was alive when that show was on the air. And he was like, I don't get this joke. And my editors are like, you guys, you have to be kidding. Like it's a Brady Bunch joke. And this was back in the 90s, like when it was still sort of, they were making Brady Bunch movies and stuff.
Right.
But in any event, I got hit up by this Hollywood producer who reached out to me. He's like, hey, by the way, you know what? I represent Ashton Kutcher, who's starting a new television show. Like it's a prank show called Punked.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
We're going to do practical jokes on people. And he's like, Ashton really likes your writing. Do you mind, submitting or doing some stuff? And so I tried out for that show, I guess, in a way. Unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, I'm in a good spot now, so it's not too bad. Yeah. But I tried out for it. And and I think back to it. I'm like, oh, that would have been cool, to be a part of be a writer on Punked or something like that. And just thinking of what could have happened, like of all the things, like I think I was talking to one of my friends about this one time because obviously, he's like, hey, his point was it worked out well for you that you didn't get that gig. Oh, you know what? This was because Kyle Brandt was talking about this because Kyle Brandt was talking about trying out for the new Knight Rider or something like that. And he never would have been on GMFB. And as a matter of fact, he made the joke. He's like, Rank would be sitting in this seat winning Emmys or whatever, but it's very sweet of him. But I was like, yeah, I go, and so it was like, oh, it's a good thing that he didn't get the Knight Rider job. Like it worked out perfectly for it. And people say that, they were saying that to me too. Like, hey, like good thing, like you're doing a great job with it. And I go, I agree 100%. Although I will point out, if you think about this, if you think about the people who are on Punk, not just necessarily Ashton Kutcher, but BJ Novak was on that show, who of course plays Ryan Howard on The Office. What if that would have led to being a bit role, like if I was a bit role player on The Office? I don't know who I would have been. Like, I don't know. Maybe I could have been Roy. I don't know what I would have done because everybody was kind of cast to their own special. I could have been one of the Roy or a different warehouse worker or something like that. Like, I could have been on The Office. So I don't know. Wait, hold on. I might have a regret here. Or because Dax Shepard was on that too. I might have ended up doing Chips. So I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe I would have married Kristen Bell. Who knows? The thing is, no disrespect to anybody. Yeah, so it's crazy. So I did. So obviously, yeah, I had ideas of it. One of my friends, Brooks Whelan, wrote for Saturday Night Live for a year and had a great experience. And so, yeah, I think about that. I don't know. I would never close the door on that either. I think every time I do a sketch on GMFB weekend, I think of it as a SNL tryout still. Like I'm not the right age. I think it might have passed me by, but I still think that maybe, I don't know, there's a chance.
Yeah. If they call you up tomorrow, you'd probably take it, right? Like
I'd be like,
right
see you
away.
guys later. It's been an enjoyable.
I'm gonna be honest, like I used to watch SNL. I've been watching it like forever, and it's not as good anymore. Like I'm not, no hate to that show, but they're missing something. So I think they need another writer. Maybe you gotta put some sports into it as well. Cause like it's always funny when they do like sports skits, like when like Eli Manning hosted or like Peyton, like those are always like the best shows. So I think that show needs like a different kind of feel or a different kind of, like vibe to it. So maybe you would, turn the show around. You think so?
I will tag SNL when we tweet out this podcast.
Call out Lorne Michaels. Yeah.
Hey, Lorne Michaels. I don't know. Listen to this is your demographic. This is your target audience.
Yeah.
It is funny though. I think of it too, though. And I will tell you this, Jacqueline, is that whatever group that you grow up with will always be the best Saturday Night Live group, because believe it or not, when Sandler and Spade and all those guys were doing Saturday Night Live, Chris Farley, people complained then that Saturday Night Live was not as good as it used to be.
I was just talking about that with my dad last night, because he was telling me how, like, I was talking about how, like, I'm not crazy about the show anymore, and I was talking about how back then was like the greatest time ever, but he was telling me that like it wasn't actually. They were getting a lot of hate, which is just crazy to me, because I watch back and I'm like, this is the greatest era of Saturday Night Live. So that's bizarre.
Yeah, even I think the first big switch was when Eddie Murphy went on there, and people hated Eddie Murphy. And you think about it now, like, how would you hate Eddie Murphy? Now it's like the golden age, and it was a huge deal when he went back and did a lot of his classic sketches. I just think, again, I don't know if it's just one of those things that people just, you're drawn to your era, and that's the thing. And, 10 years down the road, somebody will be like, oh, Saturday Night Live's not good anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, it's super multifaceted. Adam Rank, I know in a couple answers ago, you were saying about Fantasy Live and how you grew that. And I think a lot of people, you and Fabiano especially, were such a huge part in growing that show and the whole fantasy at NFL Network. How many years have you been playing fantasy football, Adam Rank?
Too many. I remember drafting guys like Emmitt Smith. The first draft that I ever did. Yeah. The first draft that I ever did was I was in school still, that was, I was not a cool high schooler. So it lends itself to me doing nerdy things like this. I remember the first fantasy draft I did was an auction draft, and I didn't know how it worked really. And I overbid for Thurman Thomas. And I remember the, bidding up somebody who, like, they had $31 and I had 30, and I forget the player. It was like somebody like Haywood Jeffries or something. And I bid him. I'm like, I'm going to bid him. He's like, why are you bidding me up? Because I have more money than you. So I'm obviously going to get this player. And it was the last guy on his roster. And I'm like, well, I want you to have the highest price for him. So you have to carry that cap. And I was so bummed out. Like, no. the auction values only matter during the auction, because then once the season starts, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, that sucks. Like, I want that number to carry through the whole time, because that would be a fun way to do it. Like, oh, if you want to trade this player, he's an $11 player, so you got to throw in another guy. I just think it would be more interesting. But that was one of the things. Like, we would have there was a group of us kids that were, doing fantasy football. We did a baseball one that was weekend. We would only do the weekends because we used to have to do it by hand.
Right.
You would have to get somebody was in the
Right.
newspaper, like doing all the statistics. And we had this guy who would spend, I think it was his biology class, just sitting there with a newspaper, just doing all the statistics for us on Monday morning. But yeah, it's been a long time. It's always been something that it's been a part of my life for pretty much forever.
Yeah,
No,
fantasy
no.
football is stressful. I haven't done it in a few years, but I think the last time I had the second pick overall. This was, I think, 2018. Correct me if I'm wrong. I drafted Le'Veon Bell. This is the year he sat out,
Oh
and I didn't.
no.
And like, I think I came in last place. I had the second pick overall. I'm so excited. And I draft Le'Veon Bell. So I think that kind of like crushed me, just like of ever playing it again.
You'll never play again. You gotta, oh
I
man,
don't know.
you gotta get back. Well, can you at least download the fantasy app? Like,
Yes,
even if you're
I
not
will
playing,
download. I
please,
will down. No,
please.
I was actually I was in a league like last year or 2019, but I missed the draft. I was like at a party or something, and I totally
That
forgot that.
happens.
Yeah, first year university student. I totally forgot that I had my draft, so I was like kicked out of the league. So the last time I did play was 2018, but I will play this year.
All right.
For you, and I will be listening to you for my draft.
Yes.
All right. Well, please, I'll get you in a league. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
I'll get both of you in a league. Can I tell you that year though? Let me tell you a story, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Of course.
It's actually football related.
Yeah.
So it actually,
Stuff.
so the Khalil Mack trade goes
Mhm.
down on a Saturday morning, and I have the number one pick in my draft, and I'm sitting there getting ready, and my one of my friends who's a Raiders fan changed his team name to like, thanks for everything, Khalil, something like that.
Okay.
And I'm like, hey, what happened? What's going on? What happened to Mac? Oh no,
Yeah.
he changed it to Macless Raiders. Like, what happened? Is Mac, like, did he get traded? And he responds with like, shut up. And I'm like, no, what happened? Yeah, because he thinks I'm pulling his leg.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Where did he go? Who did he get traded to? And he's like, the expletives start coming out. It's like expletive, like he's just berating me to the point of like, what? Like, where? And he's like, I'm so, like, he just really goes off the rails. So finally I look it up and he goes to the Bears. So I'm so enthralled with being on Twitter and looking stuff up and texting people and like, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is amazing. All this stuff. Our draft starts. I don't realize it. I have the number one pick in the draft. I auto pick Le'Veon Bell.
Oh.
And I remember going in that Monday morning, and I went up to Michael Fabiano, and I was like, why the hell is Le'Veon Bell the default number? Like, he's not even going to play this year.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm like, I should have paid closer attention to our product at this point, but he always kind of like handled that stuff where you didn't really think about it. But I was so upset. And I'm like, first of all, it shouldn't be Le'Veon Bell anyways.
Yeah.
And this is the exact reason why. Like, if you miss your draft and you get auto picked Le'Veon Bell, this is awful. Yeah. And I lost that season and I never recovered. And I'm still mad about it, but we got Khalil Mack. So I'm not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I must have took a little bit away from the Mac trade that morning.
Well, and it was even worse. If we would have won that week 1 game against the Packers, I wouldn't have cared as much, but then we lost and then there was a lot of things going on and I was upset, but
yeah, no, for sure. So Adam, we're on the football topic now. So we'll stay with the football.
Let's go back to, have you ever seen the show Crashing? No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm sorry.
No,
I talk about anything.
Talking about shows as well. Yeah, we can do that as well for sure.
Have you ever heard of a movie called Up in the Air with George Clooney and Anna Kendrick?
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah, but I've never seen it.
I don't know. It's been on HBO. It's been on my mind. I don't know why I watch it. It's now I don't know why it suddenly has this state of deference in my life that every time that it's on, I have to watch it. And I'm like, why this
Really?
movie? It
It's
makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Is it worth the watch?
Yeah.
No.
Is it that?
Please
No.
don't watch it. Please don't
No.
watch it. It really actually it's a good movie. I'm a Clooney fan, so
Okay.
it's a little bit different for you. What about Ozark? You guys watching Ozark?
Not watching Ozark. No, I've been watching Curb Your Enthusiasm with my family for the first time ever. We all watched it. Um, I watched Glee. Do you guys remember Glee from like 2010?
I remember when The
course,
Office
yeah.
referenced it.
Yes,
I never
yes.
watched Glee. I never watched Glee.
You
I know
never
it was
watched it? No, I watched when COVID started. I watched it, and then I made my brother and my mom watch it. Now I'm making my dad watch it. So we're watching Glee, which is like not a show that a lot of dads would watch. So that's what we're watching now.
That's fun. That's a wholesome show. That's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
but no, yeah.
Yeah, you
Sorry,
know
Mark?
what, Adam? I've always been trying to watch Ozark, though. I've never gotten into it though. So I do want to hear what you kind of have to say about it. I know that's on your mind
Yeah.
lately. So
Well, no, it's I'm finishing up the second season right now. And it's funny because I think it was Mike Taglieri who gave me the like, you've never seen Ozark, bro? And I'm
Right.
like, okay, first of all, Ozark is not a you've never seen, bro?
no,
Like
it
that,
isn't. No.
that's not the same cat. Like there's certain shows that you can do that for.
Yeah.
You never
I
seen
think The
Breaking
Office.
Bad?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Office? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ozark, not quite there. It's a good show. I enjoy it. I always enjoy shows like that. I watched The Shield. I watched Sons of Anarchy, The Mayans now. So that's kind of like this. It's kind of a wheelhouse show for me. Like I like it. Jason Bateman's great in everything that he does and the character that he plays. I really like it because the protagonists are not necessarily good guys.
Right.
And I think that's always I think it's probably a huge kick for writers to be able to write about these complicated characters who, not necessarily the best people, but you're still rooting for them in some respect. There was a show, a British show that was on Amazon called Fleabag. And it was about it's a short 12 episodes for 2 seasons, like season 1, 6 episodes, season 2, 6 episodes. And just having characters that are not like, they're not perfect. Like it's just sometimes with writers, there's an easy cop out to be like, oh, this is a good person that got caught up in a bad situation. But writing about a bad person, not necessarily a bad person, but like a complicated person in a bad situation. But you still find a way to find them redeeming and rooting for them. I think that that's an art that not a lot of people can pull off. So I think that Ozark does a pretty nice job with that.
No, for sure. I've heard a lot about it. I just, like I said, I've never watched it yet. So I will definitely take that recommendation.
Put it on your to-do list.
For sure, for sure. The one question I did want to ask you though, Adam, I'm sure you've seen this Tim Hortons coffee. I know a lot of people from this side of the border have seen you on Tim and Sid and a variety of other.
Oh shoot!
Canadian...
I gotta text them back.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Thank you.
But that's where a lot of people have seen you, and on this side of the border. I was wondering, have you ever been to Canada?
Wait, are you guys Canadian?
Of course. Yes.
I'm joking. I'm joking. It's so like I knew like the voices for sure. The accent, I should say.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
To my knowledge, as a cognizant adult, I've never been to Canada. It's one of those things. Like I had apparently the first 5 years of my life were eventful. My parents will be like, oh, you've been there. You've been to Mount Rushmore. You've been here. I'm like, I don't remember it. Like me being an infant in front of Mount Rushmore does not count for anything.
Of course not. Yeah.
No.
But Canada, I want to go so bad. I want to go to Toronto.
Yeah.
I want to be in studio with Tim. Like I want to sit and lock eyes with them. Cause like I do a lot of work for them and they're such delight. It's such a stereotype to be like Canadians are so nice.
We're
but
all
like
nice.
They are.
Yeah.
Sure, I go, I go, this is what happens when you don't have to worry about healthcare. You can be a very
Yeah.
nice person.
Canada's a nice place now, yeah, for sure. Well, we actually got snow today, surprisingly. We have
Wait, what part of
snow.
Canada are you in?
Toronto.
Manitoba?
Toronto.
So you are Toronto. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we got snow, so it's not the weather isn't great, but a lot of other things are pretty nice here. It's
You know
not
what
bad.
though? When you're in big cities,
Yeah.
and I know that I do this for like short stints, going to New York City, going to Minnesota, or anything like that. I was in Minnesota for 2 weeks for the Super Bowl, and it can't get much colder than Minnesota at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would even like, and now somebody who was born in Chicago but raised in Southern
Right.
California, I'm a Southern California softie. Like
Of
if
course, yeah.
it's, I wake up and it's 14 degrees, and yes, I'm doing Celsius.
Yeah, you're
That's
doing
the
Celsius.
smartest
There we
way.
go.
Because anything less than 20 is cold to me. Like if it's
Oh my
it's gotta be over 20 before I'm finally like comfortable. Like it's gotta be at least
No.
20. Yeah,
Here,
no,
here it's like if it's 13, people are outside in their t-shirts.
of
They're
course.
they're going swimming. They're eating outside. Yeah, all of that. But for you, it's like it's freezing.
But here's the story: is that after 2 weeks in Minnesota, it was below 0 Celsius one
Yep.
day. I think it was actually 0 Fahrenheit even.
Wow.
So it was negative temperatures. And I went out and I'm bald. And I went out without a ski cap. And I'm like, and my friend was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I think I'm used to it now. I think and to me, that's the one thing about big cities in the cold is like, you just figure it out.
Yeah.
And you give me enough time, I'll figure it out. And then of course, I'm always the kind of guy who will probably try to take the cheap way out. So I would go to Vancouver or something because I'm like, I always wonder too about people who live in Seattle. Like, why don't you just live in Canada? Like
Yeah.
you're almost
You're right there.
You're
Yeah.
not getting any break weather-wise. Like what explain to me. And like, you got to be careful because what you hear about America is pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
People get irate, like, how dare you? Like, you don't love it. I'm like, I love this country, but I'd love free health, not free healthcare, but I'm like, I would love healthcare. I would love that. And a lot of other things that Canada's got going for it. So I'm like, yeah, like I think I would. Like if I was that close, I would do that.
Would hockey ever interest you? Do you watch any hockey, Adam? Or
Bro, I'm a Kings fan.
okay.
Okay.
I'm
okay.
a Kings fan, and it was a huge thing because the Kings were the only one of my teams that had never won a championship. So I like the Bears because I grew up out here. There was no football. So
Right.
we didn't.
Right,
So
right.
what you do? So Southern California had this weird thing about like you would love either the Angels or the Dodgers,
Mm-hmm.
the Kings or the Ducks. Not necessarily. Nobody likes the Ducks.
Yeah, no one likes
There's
the
a
Ducks.
there's
I've
a
never heard of that.
small group of people who likes the Ducks. Everybody loves the Lakers. There's like four
Of
people who like.
course.
There's 4 people who love the Clippers, and I know all 4 of them. And then, but yeah, and then you rooted for whatever football team your parents liked, or
Yeah,
or the
that's me,
Patriots,
Giants, yeah.
or the Patriots, like something like that.
Or yes, of course, the Patriots are very
Patriots,
popular.
Cowboys, Steelers,
Yeah.
somebody like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the Bears. So for me, the Kings were the last of my favorite teams to win a championship. And I was able, and it was cool because like I was old enough like to see because the Bears one doesn't really matter as much to me because it's 85. It's so long ago.
Yeah.
I sort of remember it, and the Lakers do it every other year, so it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. But the Angels in 2002 was huge, and the Kings in 2012 when they won was monstrous.
Mm.
Like it was a lot of fun. There's not necessarily a ton of Kings fans, but the Kings fans who exist are the most hardcore fans in any sport. Like they have the best
Wow.
fans. I will say this about the Ducks too. Like the people who are really into the Ducks, they're like super into it. Although the Ducks get more of the like, oh, I grew up watching the movie and it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But the Kings fans for sure are some of the most ardent, diehard fans
Wow.
that you can imagine. And the celebrations were crazy. I will tell you this. So obviously the Kings and this was tough for me because, a lot of my family's still in Chicago
Chicago, yeah.
and they hate the Kings and they hate like that it was a big rivalry, like Kings Blackhawks for 3 to 5 years. That was like a huge rivalry. I remember actually walking into a bar in Chicago during the Blackhawks Bruins series, and I was wearing a Kings shirt, and they were playing the Chelsea Dagger song, and it stopped when I walked in, and everybody just looked at me, and I'm like, you beat us. Like, who cares? Like like, you're fine. And then the bartender was like, no, you don't like, he's like, you guys cost us. Like, we should be going through for a three-peat. And I'm like, well, we should be going for back-to-back. So don't worry about it. We'll call it even. And so I remember one of the Super Bowls. So it was Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara. I had brought a Kings beanie, but the weather was so nice. Like it didn't call for a beanie. So I put on a ball cap, and I had a Bears hat on me with me. So I put it on, and we're sitting there, and I took my sister and and then, cause you get 2 tickets. And it's luck would have it, one of my best friends from work was sitting next to me with her mother, and she's a hockey fan, and she's actually a Blackhawks fan.
Oh.
And I look back, and I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, what? I'm like, all right, don't make it obvious, but I'm pretty sure that Anze Kopitar is in the row behind us.
Oh, wow.
And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I go, and I look back, and I'm like, oh, actually, like, there's Dustin Brown. There's Alec Martinez.
Wow.
There's Jeff Carter.
Wow.
There's Jonathan Quick.
Yeah.
There is, it's the whole team. And I remember at one point I walked out of our aisle, and Jonathan Quick stopped me and started just because the goalies, like, every time you see him at the post game, like the Stanley Cup celebrations, he was hammered. And and so he was talking, he was really running his mouth about, I'm like, whoa. And because I had a Chicago, and it dawned on me, I had a Chicago hat on, and I go, no. And I go, dude, I'm a Kings fan. And he's like, no. And I'm like, bro, I have been to the End, which is a bar in Hermosa where they hang out.
Okay.
And he's like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I've been, like, I go, I've been there and whatever. And I think it wasn't Alec Martinez. It wasn't Doughty. It might've been Drew Carter. Actually, it was Jeff Carter, who was like, hey bro, like, he's like, he's wasted. It's totally cool. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I go, I'm sorry. I go, I don't mean to interrupt or anything. He's like, no, you're all fine. And I'm like, hey, I go, can I go, never mind. And the guy's like, what? I'm like, I'm not doing, no, enjoy the game. And I just walked out. I didn't take a photo. I'm like, I wanted to in the moment, but I'm like, they're having fun. I did sneak a photo, like, of those guys, and it was cool. I got to go back and find it. I know it's on my camera roll, but nobody's looking except Anze Kopitar just happens to look into the camera. But it looks like I'm taking a selfie with my sister.
Okay.
It's not too obvious.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that was kind of cool. So I'm a puck guy.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I know we're okay this year. Like, we beat the Ducks last night. We beat them 4-1.
Yeah. I've been been following hockey, honestly, enough. I'm a Rangers fan, but I've been following like one bit, honestly. It's
wait, so are you all New York teams then?
Only Rangers, Giants, but I'm Raptors for Toronto, and then Blue
Nice.
Jays for baseball. No, Giants were always just because my dad grew up in Montreal, and for whatever reason he only got Giants games. So I don't know why, but
okay.
So he was always a Giants fan. And then hockey, I was a Leafs fan growing up, and then I got really into Marty St. Louis, and he just signed, and then he when he went to the Rangers is when I just started following them, and now they're my favorite team. So they kind of just stuck.
Did your dad follow the Canadians?
Yeah, he did. He followed the Canadians. Now he's not really a big like hockey guy, but he was a diehard Canadians kid growing up. Like both my parents were.
That's my team, the Habs. So
the Habs.
We had some rivalries with you guys back in the 90s.
That winking son of a bitch, Patrick Waugh.
Yeah.
I hate him. And Marty McSorley's curved stick.
Yes. Oh, it was. It was.
I mean, obviously it was. And they obviously knew. And I remember the spin coming out of that too, because obviously the Kings won game 1. Yeah. And we're about to close out game 2 before they figured out, or Marty went out there with the wrong stick. And I almost fell out of my chair just thinking about this. Like what? Like I just remember Marty's face, like when they're measuring it, like he knew he messed up, and it's like, bro, what is happening? And then it was you pulled the goalie too, right? So it ended up being like a 6-on-4.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So a 6-on-4, tie the game, win in overtime. I think 3 of those, if not every game, but there were a number of overtime games. What a great series that was.
Yeah, no, I remember watching, obviously, like you said off the top, we're young, obviously we weren't alive for that, but I remember watching highlights of McSorley and that whole series. It was a classic. I think 93 it was, right? So
92, 93. Yeah. Right there when NHL night, like as a kid, we would play Sega. Yeah. We would use, and we had a great line. We had the Millen, Donnelly, and Granato line. Like our second line was great. Like obviously Gretzky, but our second line was money. We had Rob Blake, Kelly Rudy. That was the best playoff series that he ever had. And because we had knocked off Toronto with Sweet Doug Gilmore. Yeah. And that was a fantastic series. And I think like Gretzky had a baseball one where he hit one out. Oh man, it was a phenomenal time to be a Kings fan. And it was such a bummer to not win that Stanley Cup. But these things happen.
They do. So you've seen Gretzky live though, then?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's amazing. And it's funny to me. And I know that everybody, I used to, when I was doing stuff with Damashek, and he was just such a Lemieux guy, and so funny. Like, their arguments for Lemieux was always like, well, like he's more physically gifted, and if he was healthy the whole time or whatever, I'm like, bro, like that's an argument for anybody. Like, couldn't you say the same thing about Eric Lindros? Like, obviously more physically imposing than Gretzky. And they're like, well, he played with such great players. And I know that the one drawback on Gretzky is that Edmonton won the year after he left, or recently after he left. You're like, that was a pretty good team that he was a part of. But the Kings became so much better. And I know that he went to a team. Bernie Nichols was actually my favorite player as a kid. And if you look at Bernie Nichols, like his scoring average jumps one year for a little bit of time. You're like, oh, I wonder what the thing. Oh, he played with Gretzky. Yeah, of course.
Right.
And there's another crazy stat too. Like if you remove all of Gretzky's goals, he is still the top scorer in NHL history, which is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, like those stats are just never going to get reached. It doesn't seem like that. Like they're more unbreakable than Jerry Rice's receiving yards record and like some of the other like not going to be broken records. So yeah,
for sure.
I think we're gonna wrap it up soon. I do want to ask though quickly about, you went on tour 2 years ago, right? It was a comedy football tour. Where did that inspiration come from?
It was something that I always wanted to do. Mm-hmm. I would because like anytime I do shows, I go out and then after the show you're meeting and greeting with everybody, and everybody just wants to come up and talk fantasy. And I'm like, oh, we should figure out a way to make this a thing. Like this should be part of it. And so we worked with the Improv and a couple of other smaller venues. Like we did the Beat Kitchen in Chicago and had a good time. And it was a lot of fun. It was we were still trying. It was my friend and my friend Greg Wilson. We were doing this like we were still trying to find the footing because everybody was like, this should work, but it's not quite. I'm like, I don't know, like, should we do the football first and then do a show? Should we do the show after? So we were trying to figure it out. And it was a lot of fun. And unfortunately, last year with everything that happened in the world, the pandemic happened and we kind of had to slow it down. But we, hopefully sometime in the future, we'll start doing that again. I thought that, because towards the end of it, we figured out like, let's just start doing the smallest venues possible. We were charging like, because the Improvs and everything, everybody thought it was going to work. And we're like, oh, we should probably not charge. Cause I think whenever you do like radio station appearances, like they're always free. And I think like people with sports always assume like, oh, like an appearance is going to be free. Like, why is somebody paying for it? Which is fine. Like it cut down on my money or whatever, but I'm like, who cares? It's just part of it's about getting out there and meeting with people. And we had I had kind of like finally had figured it out at the end of this run of like, we would partner with the radio station. So their host would come out. So if you like, for instance, let's use Tim as an example. Like if I was going to do a show in Toronto, we would have Tim host it and then come out and do our thing. And then everybody, so he would be able to promote it on his various shows that he does. So everybody would come out and not only to see Tim, but to see all of us and do a thing. And so hopefully sometime, if not this year, then hopefully 2022. That would be awesome to go out there. Whenever you guys trust Americans again. And honestly, I don't blame you if you don't. Like, I don't, there's nothing I can say. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much right. Like you get all the indignant people in Florida. Like, what do you mean you can't? I'm like, I can't trust you. Like, I don't even want to go to Florida. Like,
I know.
Like people, it is so crazy to me because I have friends who will say stuff like, yeah, like people, like I haven't been wearing a mask this whole time. I'm like, bro, that's not something to brag about.
No, I know. I see these people in Florida, like during spring break. I'm like, oh my God,
like it
makes me, I can't, because here it's like, people are pretty respectful. I think everyone wears their mask. Not everyone follows the rules, but people are being respectful. But some places, man, like Florida is just crazy.
They've gone off the rails, and it's, it's like the person that will tell you like, oh, like I'm a good drunk driver. I'm like, that's not a skill. It's not a skill you should brag about. No. You have Lyft and Uber for this, or you guys are in Toronto, you have public transportation. Like there's no excuse for like, if you're like somebody was like, hey, like I don't make my kid wear a mask. I'm like, do you make your kid wear a seatbelt? Like tell me where's the breakdown?
Thank you. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Like, like you'll give them an AR-15, but not a mask. Like that is the most American thing ever. Like you can't live. Hey bro, you can't live your life in fear. You're like, you have an AR-15 strapped to your back lecturing me about living in fear. Are you kidding me? Like, I got to protect my family. Like, no.
You would be perfect here in Toronto. Yeah. You're like the perfect. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have so many of these things. Like somebody's like, you don't want me to protect my family. I'm like, bro, here's what I do. And believe me, my dad was military. Like I'm proficient with firearms. I don't like them. I don't keep them. I have a fire extinguisher. If somebody breaks into my house, like, listen, if somebody breaks into my house, I would wait for them and hit them with or you could hit them with the fire extinguisher. But if you spray them, you disorient them.
Yeah.
And then and guess what? I'm not killing my family accidentally. Like I'm just going to light off a fire extinguisher. That's my tip for everybody, by the way. If you take one thing out of this show, fire extinguisher is probably the best weapon to use in home defense. And that's been verified by, I've actually asked one of my family members who's a police officer. That's what they're like, oh, that's actually a good idea. I'm like, thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, you got the approval there. Yeah, no. Out of all the things we talked about, that's what
that's the one thing.
That's
by the way,
the main thing.
That family member is actually kind of like on the out, because like I probably shouldn't say this, but my grandfather had some run-ins with the law. So it's always funny, like, how did somebody end up in law? But that's the Irish way, I think. I'm Irish. I'm not from Ireland, but our family lineage. Like, that's the way. You're either a cop or a criminal, it feels like. Chicago. Go read up. Don't read up on our family or anything like that. But.
We won't. We won't for sure.
Yeah, we don't want to keep you too long here, Adam. Yeah. So I got one more question for you. We've hit on so many different topics. This is going to be a football question, so you might not like it, but it's just going to go in terms of the draft. So out of the weapons this year, who are you thinking we should spotlight in our fantasy drafts this fall? I mean, there's a lot of receivers. I know you were high on Justin Jefferson last year. Yeah. Everyone should have listened to you there. Who do you got this year? Who should we be looking out for?
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on the situation. And that was one of the things we talked about last year. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot going into the draft last year as well. But then he goes to the Cowboys, which you knew was going to kind of curb his production because Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, all the weapons that they were going to try to run the ball at some point. So a lot of it depends on the situation. I do love the idea of Jamar Chase. If he goes to the Dolphins, I think that he would step in as their number one option. I think if he goes to the Bengals, I think he'll be good, but I think people are sleeping on T. Higgins if they don't think that T. Higgins is going to siphon a little bit of his production. I'm very curious. I think Elijah Moore is somebody that I've been looking at a lot, who I really think could come in and immediately step into a role where he's highly productive out of the slot. I mean, he can play inside or outside and he can get down the field, but I think that he's got that kind of ability. Like if he went to a team like Tennessee, where they already have AJ Brown, and then you would have Elijah Moore as their kind of de facto slot guy. Again, he could play inside or outside. I think that he could end up being pretty good. And of course you have Jalen Waddle. Like if he goes to Philadelphia, that would be pretty good. Whoever, if the Giants draft a receiver, like if they ended up with Devonta Smith or somebody like that, that would be good. That would be a good pick. I'm curious to see how the distribution would work out, because obviously they brought in Kenny Golladay, but I think that where they are now, and I know that the Giants have a lot of needs, but you have to figure, the thing is, you have to figure out if Daniel Jones is your quarterback or not. Yeah. And that's why I would go with Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. Kyle Pitts is not going to fall that far, but go there and get another offensive piece. Don't think that you're done just because you got Kenny Golladay. Surround him with as much available talent as possible. You'll know by the end of the year.
So this is like his last straw kind of thing. Like if it's no good, then he's done, Jones.
He doesn't have to win the Super Bowl, but you have to see some tangible improvement and be like, okay, this is a quarterback that we can win with. Then we'll start to sprinkle in some defensive players and some other needs and do stuff like that. Because if not, then you're going to draft a quarterback next year anyways, and you're going to want that guy to have as many weapons as possible. So it would behoove them to go and take one of these guys. Although I always feel, and we did this last year going into the draft, because we loved all these receivers and we're like, oh my God, like CeeDee Lamb's going to go to the Raiders. Yeah. And this guy's going to go here and this guy's going to go here. And then we waited, was it 12, 13 picks before Henry Ruggs was the first receiver off the board. So who knows? Like, I know that everybody's looking at the draft thinking like, oh, like 7 quarterbacks are going in the first 6 picks. I know those numbers are wrong, but you know what I'm saying? Like everybody's like, oh, like guys are going to fall. Yeah. So that's the most enjoyable thing. So I'm interested to see that. Also, I will point this out as well, because obviously it takes so long, or it takes a little bit of time for tight ends to come in and make an impact. We just don't see the rookie tight ends, and we've loved a lot of them. TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, all these guys who've had ability. We're like, he should be ready to go from day one. Tight end is such a tough position to figure. So I would curb your expectations on Kyle Pitts. The only 2 spots, which are probably his 2 most likely spots to go, Atlanta, Cincinnati. If he goes to one of those 2 spots, I think that I would probably take a chance on him. Otherwise, if he goes to, like, say he went to Carolina, I think eventually it would end up working out for him. But I think this year would be a year I would probably avoid him.
Yeah, and that's where you have Kyle Pitts going in your mock draft. If anybody wants to look at Adam Rank's mock draft, that is on his YouTube channel. He did his annual mock draft last night, or I think that was on Monday, actually. Right,
Monday,
Adam?
yeah.
Sorry, on Monday. So take a look at that. I know you had Pitts going 4th, and then you had the Bears trading down. Do you think that's the best option for your Bears?
I would think so. I mean, if for whatever reason, Mac Jones could certainly fall there. I know that it was one of the CBS guys who had Davis Miles going in. I'm like, Davis Miles is like a 3rd round pick. Because that's the thing. Like once it's like a fantasy draft, or not necessarily, but like once the teams that need quarterbacks draft their quarterbacks, nobody else is drafting a quarterback. Like nobody's got a need for Davis Miles or anything like that. They're not going to go for Kellen Mond either. No, like everybody's going to have their quarterback. You can actually wait, and you'll be able to wait to the 3rd round. I mean, if they move down and acquire multiple picks, I could see it, but I was actually, and the whole guise of my mock draft is kind of like suggestions. I'm not doing it as predictions, but I'm like, this is what you should do. Like with the Falcons, Because the Falcons, I'm like, if you think that you need a quarterback, draft a quarterback. I don't think that they should. I think I would stick with Matt. Matt Ryan's got at least 3 more years.
Yeah.
If you want to trade down for a team that wants a quarterback, like let's say Justin Fields is available at 4 and one team wants to trade up, like I would do that if possible. But if you stay in that spot, I think Kyle Pitts is perfect for them because you put him with Julio, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
You're gonna give it a go with Matt Ryan at that point.
For sure.
Might as well give him as many weapons as possible. And they've done a decent job of rebuilding that offensive line. So I think it'll be all right.
Wow. So I'm gonna end it off here. One more question. I know we've had you on for like an hour. I feel like we can have you on for like 5 more hours. I feel like we have so much to talk about, but
because my answers are so long.
No, but they're great.
How are you doing? And I'm talking for 30 minutes.
No. It's been great. But it came out this morning that Justin Fields has managing epilepsy, is what he said. Is that gonna bring his stock down?
There's always things that, for whatever, I feel like NFL teams, it's kind of like when you're like dating somebody and you're trying to find reasons not to, like, oh, we could never get along because of this. And I think that sometimes these teams do that where they're like, hey, he's got this condition. I don't know that we can trust. And like, he played at Ohio State. He played at a big time university. If this is somebody who played at, UC Davis or something like that, he played at Portland State. No disrespect to the Portland State fans out there. Like, okay, like maybe you take this into account, but he went out there for Ohio State, was dealing, tore up Clemson. Outplayed
injured
Trevor Lawrence. I don't care. Like, oh, he's got epilepsy. Like, okay, sorry. He's a good football player. Like it should have no impact. Like he's gotten this far in his life. I think he'll be okay. I don't think I'm sure some teams will be overcautious with it, but I think that if you are of the mind, if you've done your scouting on him and believe that he could be, and I do believe that he's an NFL caliber quarterback, make the move. Like, I don't care. Like, I understand, but I again, if you're trying to nitpick and find reasons not to draft a guy, you can do that for everybody. Like, I'll find reasons not to draft anybody. Like even Trevor Lawrence, the guy's he's had problems with his shoulders, and people are like, hey, Chad Pennington had something, like you don't.
We've seen Mark here.
No. Don't be scared. Don't be scared. We've seen them play well. They're fine. Like I have no reservations about Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. Some of the other guys maybe, but those 2 guys to me are far and away the best guys. I would have no problem having them as a quarterback of the Bears if they wanted to go there. If everybody wants to pass on Justin Fields and let him drop to number 20, well, I'd be happy to take him.
Of course you will. Of course you will.
And I personally can't wait for Lawrence the Savior to come to Jacksonville and help us out in 8 days from now. But I think that's so true, Adam, because a lot of people forget about that bowl game against Clemson. And they also want to think about, the other Ohio State quarterbacks, Dwayne Haskins or other products who have failed, right? But I think it's a completely different player, right? Like you're just coming up with reasons, right? So.
Oh, it's the worst. I hate when people do that. And they do that with Mac Jones. Like, oh, Alabama quarterbacks. Am I right?
Right.
You know what? Who are the great Michigan quarterbacks before Tom Brady? I know Jim Harbaugh was good. Yeah. But like Tennessee wasn't necessarily turning out these great quarterbacks before Peyton Manning became a starter. So I think that's okay. Like if you looked at it, Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf went 1 and 2 in the draft.
Yeah.
Ryan Leaf came from Washington State, where Drew Bledsoe had just played very well and was a good NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, what could you imagine? Like back in the day, being like, well, like Tennessee quarterbacks, am I right? I'm going to go with the Washington State guy. They have a better track record.
Oh God.
Like if Cal quarterbacks, are Cal quarterbacks great because of Aaron Rodgers? What happened to Jared Goff? Like, these are different people. I agree with you. And I hope our friends down in Duval. And I kind of picked up on the fact that you're a Duval fan because you have jerseys of guys who no longer play there, unfortunately.
I know, but that's the sad part. That's how sad the franchise has been, as you have been aware of, Adam. And I know you're a big Duval guy. So
I represent my friends down in Duval County. You know what? That all started. I was at the draft one year And it was really like the draft when it was in New York City, and no disrespect to all these fine venues that we've been going around to. Las Vegas, I can't wait to get out there. But
Yeah.
Mhm.
there was something about being in New York City. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to New York City, but one
Yeah,
of the great
I've
things
been.
about it, it's so amazing. Like Radio City Music Hall had the event, anything around there, Times Square
Yeah.
was all NFL draft. This even happened during the Super Bowl. But it's so cool to be in New York. And if you were like 3 blocks off of where the Super Bowl stuff is happening, like you could be in Chelsea or Hell's Kitchen or something like that. And people could not care less about what events going on. Like it's such an
Yeah.
international city, like
Yeah.
walking into a sushi place and people having like, oh, what are you in town for? Like the Super Bowl. They're like, what's that? They're like, this is amazing. But I was walking by and they would always have these people, and I love Tim Hortons, by the way. I think I might have accidentally disrespected Tim Hortons one time. So I want to for the record say that Tim Hortons is the GOAT. Like
Yes.
there is one on there's one in Times Square across from the Hilton next to
Wow.
a Lids. So I know because that's where I would go. I would always go to that one because I was staying at the Hilton that one time, and I'm like, I will only drink Tim Hortons because this is going to be
Yes.
the only chance I will have
There we
to get
go.
it. Like it's better than Dunkin'. So
Yeah.
am I sponsored by anybody? No, we're cool. Oh yeah. But I was in New York City and there was a group of Jacksonville fans, and I'm walking by and this guy just had his camera phone out and he's like, Ray, can you just say Duval? And so I did it. And I go, what did I just say?
Yeah.
What just happened there? And then he explained to me about Duval County and all this stuff. And there was just a ton of Jags fans, and they were super cool. It was the year that you guys drafted Blake Bortles.
Oh God.
But I remember it because I went upstairs because they were at the very top of Radio City Music Hall. So I went up there. I'm like, hey, I'll go up there when you guys are picking. So I found the guy and I hung out. And ever since that point, I've been a supporter of our friends down in Duval County. I'm a wrestling guy, and Tony Khan has been very cool to me.
Yes.
So I love AEW, and I'll represent AEW, and I try to do as many AEW references when I talk about professional wrestling. So I'm in. I want to go play Sawgrass at the time.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I want the whole experience.
I love it, Adam. No, I know. I've seen you supporting Duval full steam ahead, always on NFL Network. So I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've been going for what, over an hour. This has been great. We want to thank you one more time.
Oh, my pleasure. No, this is
This
my
has been
my
great.
pleasure.
We got to get you back on soon. I'll shoot you an email. We got to come back for season prep, whatever, you name it. You've been great. It makes our job so much easier because like you're like the answers are great.
You wrote 3 questions and we filled over an hour.
No, but it's great. It's great. I mean, we were talking about this because I go back and watch some of your other interviews, and they're just so like there's so much life and excitement in them. So this has been so much fun. So we want to thank you again.
Thank
everybody. Thank you. Everybody go follow him on Twitter at Adam Rank and Instagram at Adam Rank NFL. Thank you so much, Adam.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.